getting the merge done, I think that's been the biggest challenge for a long time. It's a big problem. It's a problem that research has been working on for like almost a decade now. It's a problem that developers have been working on for several years, and like now, finally testing, finally getting quite close to actually getting it out there. So I think that's the merge is going to be this big moment that the entire Ethereum ecosystem is really looking at and focusing on, and people have a lot of big hopes and expectations for.
When there is that rush, when the accumulation phase is kind of like done, where the redistribution phase is kind of done, and there's not enough sellers left and there's growing demand, it can quickly go up from there, right? We've seen this play out plenty of times where it starts off and then boom, it goes up really, really quickly because there's just like a flood of demand that comes in. So really the supply side is going to dry up massively, and you're still going to have that natural demand, and then any extra demand that comes in, I believe, is going to push the price up very quickly. I just see so much more demand coming in the future. I'm making that big bet that I'm going to keep buying ETH because I believe that there's going to be so much more people buying it in the future. I need to get in now because my long-term price targets for ETH, like I don't give investment advice, but I give long-term price targets. It's like 100K plus is my long-term price target for ETH, like 5-10 years sort of thing. And given that ETH is only 2,700 today, that's a pretty good return over the next 5 to 10 years.
Is Ethereum incredibly undervalued right now? Should its hypothetical fair value right now be worth between $12,000 to $13,000, and could it go on to be worth over $100,000 per Ethereum within 5 to 10 years? Well, with the ETH 2.0 merge coming out later this year, top analysts in the Ethereum space think that it could. In this video, we're going to hear from founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, speak on the significance of the merge and why it's such a big deal for Ethereum holders in his latest interview. With Ethereum 2.0 being scheduled to take place between June and August this year, this is a major price catalyst I believe is being undervalued by the market. We will also hear from Ethereum expert Anthony Sassano, who was not only an early Ethereum investor and adopter, but who has also had years of experience in the Ethereum ecosystem, explain why not only the current fair value of Ethereum is $12,000 to $13,000, but why in a few years Ethereum could be worth over $100,000 per ETH. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video where I will cover the latest on-chain Ethereum data to see if it backs up this bullish viewpoint. Also, only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you enjoy finance content, consider subscribing or liking the video. It's free and you can always change your mind.
Yeah, I think scaling is aside from the merge, definitely Ethereum's biggest problem at the moment. And there are a lot of different projects that are working to fix it. So there are the layer 2 teams, for example. Optimism, Arbitrum, Metis, Starknet, ZK Sync, Loopring, this longer and longer list of projects. Then on top of that, there's all of the work that's been happening on sharding. We just had an online workshop where we talked about some parts of the sharding spec, and there's been a lot of really good progress on that. And I think there's a lot of community will to put a huge amount of effort into it. Research effort starting now, but development effort once the merge is kind of closer to being finished, and we're past that step. Then all the eyes are going to turn on to sharding and giving us some more scalability. So I'm confident that Ethereum is going to be much more scalable a year from now than it is today. And even Ethereum today, I think rollups are much further ahead than they were a year ago, right? A year ago, doing anything on a rollup was basically unrealistic, and they barely existed. And now, rollups are just a regular part of people's lives on Ethereum. And
you saw the exploit with Wormhole. Does that give you concern over the bridges between blockchains?
Definitely a concern. I think there's many different kinds of concerns. I think the software bug issue was definitely one concern, and it's definitely one of the reasons why I'm very dangerous, or I'm very cautious about solutions that try to move really quickly. There's other concerns as well, for example, just all of the issues around how would the bridge even work? If it's a multi-sig, then could people steal the keys? If it has a governance token, could people take over the governance token? Could people even 51% attack one of the chains? I do think that once you start going between chains, there are all of these really complicated issues that don't exist if you stick on any one of the chains, and that is a concern. the problems with moving between rollups, for example, are definitely like smaller, just because.
Bad idea, these bridges?
Yeah. I think the bridges are an interesting position where, like, the way that I describe it is like they have anti-network effects, in that I think cross-chain bridges become less secure the more users they have. And so if there are only a few people using them, then I would trust them. I would say that they're very safe. But the more people start using them, the more incentive there is for people to attack them, so they can like steal money from all the users at the same time. So, like, I would feel more comfortable using the bridges when they have 50,000 like ETH in them than when they have like 500,000 or 5 million, right? So, like, I definitely expect them continue to be used, but, you know, are they going to be this like really big thing that turns assets into something that's like very independent from which layer they're issued on? I would say no.
So there's Vitalik explaining why the ETH 2.0 merge is a huge deal that has had many years of blood, sweat, and tears in the making. Now, although Vitalik didn't say when ETH 2.0 is launching, he did confirm at ETH Denver that the latest date we are looking at launch would be August of this year, but more likely June or July, so not long to go. But how much should Ethereum really be worth? For this question, I think it's best explained by Ethereum expert Anthony Sassano, who explains his idea of the current fair value of Ethereum.
I think people don't understand market caps as well, especially newer people. Something with a $100 million market cap is obviously, you know, if it has a lot of demand, is going to go up in value more than ETH, because ETH has a $300 billion market cap. That's just the laws of market cap and liquidity and everything like that. It requires more money to move ETH's price than it does some other token that's worth maybe 100 million market cap or something like that. So that's kind of like a big rule of thumb. But at the end of the day, it all just comes back to supply and demand. If there is not enough supply and too much demand, the price goes up. This is the golden rule for absolutely everything in life. No matter what it is, doesn't matter if it's a crypto asset or a stock or a bond or a physical good, if there is less of it and there's more demand than can be met, prices go up. Simple as that. This is, and in crypto, within assets, ETH has a lot of demand for it, right? But it also has a supply side. It has the supply side where we mint new ETH every block to pay miners to validate the network, to secure the network. Same is true for post-merge or in proof of stake, we'll be paying validators. That's the supply side. The demand side, and also obviously people selling their ETH that maybe they held it for a while and they wanted to sell. That's all new ETH kind of like entering the market there. Then there's the demand side, which is use ETH to pay fees, right? Like, and that most of that ETH gets burned. So that is an obviously massive demand sink. As you mentioned, ETH does a lot of fee revenue. It's tens of millions of dollars a day. That's tens of millions of dollars of ETH being burned a day. ETH's demand for use as collateral within DeFi. So to actually use it as an asset, whether that's being kind of like in a liquidity position or borrowing against it. ETH's use in staking. So in proof of stake, you obviously, instead of using mining equipment, you use, it's still software involved, but instead of BPU mining equipment, you use your actual ETH, you stake it, you get a reward for doing so, you put your ETH on the line, essentially, you lock it up. Right, so it's 32 ETH per validator there. There's 9 million ETH or something staked right now, which is like 7 or 8% of the supply locked up right now. You have ETH's natural demand as a store of value, so people maybe just want to hold it. They just want to say, okay, well, I don't want to hold the fiat. I want to hold ETH because I believe ETH's going to go up over time for the reasons I just outlined, and they hold it at that. So there's a lot of demand. But the thing is that the way the markets work in the short to medium term is that there are phases of accumulation and redistribution. So what ends up happening during sideways periods, you have an accumulation and redistribution phase where you have a lot of people kind of like selling, right? You have a lot of demand, a lot of supply coming to the market, and you don't have a lot of demand, right? You have a lot of people that are buying for the future, but you don't have that rush of new kind of like retail investors flooding in with all their money to buy this thing up really quickly. That's why we have bull bear markets and sideways markets and all this sort of stuff. Whereas when there is that rush, when the accumulation phase is kind of like done, where the redistribution phase is kind of done, and there's not enough sellers left and there's growing demand, it can quickly go up from there, right? We've seen this play out plenty of times where it starts off and then boom, it goes up really, really quickly because there's just like a flood of demand that comes in. Then it comes down really quickly because there's a flood of supply that comes in, people taking profits, right? People are going to take profits. It's just the law of it. And that's why it's so volatile. So I think over the long term, ETH has been a phenomenal investment, right? Yes, it's not at all-time high right now, but ETH has not been over, has not been $2,700 for most of its life. Most of its life was spent at like $100 or something, between $100 and $300 during 2018 and 2019 and stuff like that, and even 2020. And it's only been higher than $2,700 for a few weeks, really, if you kind of like look at the charts. So I think we're taking all that into account. When we do have another flood of demand coming in to ETH, there's just not going to be much ETH around for people to buy, because the supply side is really not much. As I said, we're burning so much ETH from fee revenue. I think we're burning, we're at a net reduction of 70% of the new issuance. So all the new ETH being issued is being offset by the burn, which is 70% offset. So we've essentially cut issuance by 70%. And then that issuance is actually getting cut by another 80 to 90% come the merge in potentially June. So really the supply side is going to dry up massively, and you're still going to have that natural demand, and then any extra demand that comes in, I believe, is going to push the price up very quickly. It's just that during these periods of sideways accumulation action, there's actually a lot of people who don't want the price to move too fast because they're trying to buy up, right? There's a lot of whales, they like to buy up. Maybe they took profits higher and they're like, okay, I need to get a position again. So there's a lot of that goes on. So that's why I always take the long-term approach. It's much easier. It's much more, it keeps you much saner. It's, doesn't, you have less stress, but there is a danger there where not everything outperforms over the long term. There's a lot of projects that are just crappy projects that doesn't matter how long you look at, they've just failed and they're never going back to their previous all-time highs, and you're better off just selling and reinvesting into something else. But with ETH, when it comes to ETH, for me, all I've seen with ETH is that like all the metrics keep going up and to the right. There's so much going on in the ecosystem. There's I just see so much more demand coming in the future. I'm making that big bet that I'm going to keep buying ETH because I believe that there's going to be so much more people buying it in the future. I need to get in now because my long-term price targets for ETH, like I don't give investment advice, but I give long-term price targets. It's like 100K plus is my long-term price target for ETH, like 5-10 years sort of thing. And given that ETH is only 2,700 today, that's a pretty good return over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's how I think about it. I mean, I could talk about ETH as an asset all day, every day for a long time, and how much kind of like how good it is as an asset, and all the reasons why it should be worth a lot more than what it even is today. I think if you did like a fair value on ETH today, based on its fee, I think just its fee revenue alone, it should be worth $12,000 or $13,000 just based on that. So already today, just based on current kind of like just fair value, these are kind of like measurements that are used in the traditional finance ecosystem for traditional companies, it should be worth that. So I just look at all of that and I'm like, I'm comfy holding ETH. Doesn't matter if it halved in a few weeks. I don't care. Like over the long term, I believe it's going to go like much higher than what it is today. The short term is what I like to call a random walk, where you can walk in a kind of like straight line, right? But the thing is that the market doesn't do that. The market walks like this, right? Left, right. You never know which direction it's going to go. It can go left, it can go right, it can go, slightly left, slightly right, hard left, hard. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't walk in a straight line. So in the short term, there's no use. And then you see this play out on the charts as well. The charts over the short term is this, right? The charts over the long term for the good assets is this. Just a nice straight line up for most of the assets. You can barely even see that, depending on what chart you're looking at. So that's kind of like how I view it. And I totally agree. Like the analysts in the short to medium term, I mean, if you have like 100 analysts pointing out something, well, just by law of large numbers, there's going to be some of those analysts that were quote unquote right, but it could have just been a random guess, right? They just as easy, the other ones could have been right. But I do think that's why the short term is so volatile, because everyone's trying to be right and no one really knows. But the long term is based on the fundamental value and the fundamental demand. And that's exactly why I always take the long term view. I never give short term or medium term predictions or targets, always long term. And I only do it for ETH. I don't talk about any other assets because really I only have this strong conviction on ETH at the end of the day. But the last thing that maybe I wanted to say was, I guess we were just briefly talking about the markets. I think there's a lot of new people in the ecosystem right now who haven't experienced bear markets or sideways markets or losing money. And I think if you're in it for the right reasons, and the right reasons being in it for the tech, and you actually care about what's being built and you're a long-term investor, there's no use worrying about the short-term price movements, because if you said to yourself, well, I'm going to invest in ETH and it's going to be a 5-year investment, why are you worrying about what it does week to week? Like, were you going to sell this week? If you actually were going to stick to your 5-year investment plan, then you weren't going to sell. So it really doesn't matter. Technically you should be looking at these kind of things as a buying opportunity, right? If you've got a 5-year time horizon. So I think just getting into the mental model of not worrying about the day-to-day, week-to-week, or even month-to-month price movements, if you're a long 5+ year term investor, is the best position to be in. And I see too many people worrying about the day-to-day when they didn't even plan to sell, didn't plan to do anything. Like it's actually bizarre to me why you would even worry about it if you're not planning to sell for a very long time and you know what, you want to see the Ethereum vision come to life. So I guess that's just my closing remark there.
So there is Ethereum expert Anthony Sassano with why Ethereum could be going over $100,000 over the next few years. But does the on-chain data back him up? Well, as the regular viewers of my videos would know, my favorite place to look is at the supply side dynamics of the asset. First up, we have the amount of Ethereum staked in the ETH 2.0 deposit contract, which for those who don't know is locked up until the release of Ethereum 2.0. As you can see, we are still seeing network participants stake their Ethereum to the contract and are now at 9.6 million total Ethereum staked. We are slowly closing in on 10% of the entire supply of Ethereum being staked, which is incredible. To me, those that stake their Ethereum as it is locked is a good representation of strong, long-term focused investors who truly believe in the potential of Ethereum. On top of this, we have the Ethereum supply on all exchanges, which as we can see is still sharply in its downtrend despite all of the recent price volatility and uncertainty. This really does back up what Anthony Sassano laid out, and it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if Ethereum does over the next few years go on to fulfill what right now are pie in the sky price predictions. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed today's video and that provided you with some value. I'll see you all in the next video, and as always, have a great day.